thank you for tuning in to Through Atheist Eyes with Frank Zindler. And thank you for trying to see what the world looks like through atheist eyes. I'm Frank Zindler from American Atheist Press, and I'll be your host for this series of programs. These are really special programs that are titled Immortality Now, Living as Long as You Wish. Today's program is the second program of this series, and it is titled simply, Why Die? Why die indeed? Why don't we talk about this? Must we all die? This is a question which humankind in all ages has asked. In the Western world, the answer to this question has almost invariably been yes. What, after all, is more obvious than our mortality? To be sure, our mythologies are replete with characters such as Adam and Methuselah, who were imagined to have succeeded in eluding the Reaper for a number of centuries. But significantly, even they at last had to cash in their chips. The oldest surviving epic from antiquity, the Epic of Gilgamesh, tells of a hero who tried unsuccessfully to find the immortality plant growing at the bottom of the sea. But even Gilgamesh could not succeed. A serpent stole the tree before he could eat it. Our religions, for the most part, have given up hope for physical immortality altogether, and have invented spiritual immortality as a rather anemic substitute for which we might hope. Now, of course, from a financial point of view, this is a brilliant and profitable invention. But even so, eternity with neither bodies nor brains is hard to market. And so some religions have added the doctrine of bodily resurrection to their sales portfolio. Still, there's still something profoundly immaterial about the bodies that we will be issued when we're mustered up beside the plastic petunias in Forest Lawn. Certainly, our new bodies will not be equipped for fornication. Remember Mark verses 24 and 25 of chapter 12? And Jesus, answering, said, "For when they shall rise from the dead, they shall neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels which are in heaven." No playing spin the bottle in heaven. And there aren't any toilets in heaven either. Can you just imagine a resurrected Christian commencing to urinate and desiccate in heaven? Sneezing and sweating, too, would seem unseemly pastimes for new issue bodies. By the time that one subtracts all the activities the resurrected bodies are not likely to perform, the bodies seem hardly to be bodies at all. Socrates is famously reported to have said, "All men are mortal." And until the growth of modern biology, Socrates seems to have had the last word on the subject. But today we may at least ask why this should be so. Why do people die? A biologist would reply, because we are descended from other animals. That, of course, prompts the question, but why do animals die? A partial evolutionary answer to that question, apart from the fact that many animals are food for other animals and others become part of the flattened fauna that adheres to the roadways of the world, a partial answer is that from a cost-benefit ratio point of view, maintaining animal bodies long after the genes they carry have been passed on to a new generation is wasteful. Just as a chicken is an egg's way of making another egg, an animal body is a device used by genes to ensure successful reproduction and transmission through time. From this perspective, bodies are simply packaging for genes, wrappings to be discarded once the genes have done their thing. Our bodies are sort of like the plastic bags you get at Kroger's with which to carry your carbohydrates home. Once they've done their job, you dispose of them. An important difference, of course, is that bodies are degradable and they don't pollute the planet the way plastic bags do. Contrary to the opinion of the Pope, the main purpose of sex is not reproduction. Forms that reproduce sexually do so in order to provide new genetic combinations, to reshuffle the genes of the parent generation. Sexual recombination of genes allows evolution to occur much more rapidly than is the case in asexually reproducing organisms. Only sexually reproducing organisms die of old age. Death from old age is unknown in sexual forms such as bacteria, or in forms such as amoebas that reproduce sexually only upon certain occasions. These forms multiply by dividing, gradually losing their original identities as their material is divided up and passed on to daughter cells. Although such forms may die because of hostile environmental conditions, they never die of old age. They are truly immortal. Whereupon the question again arises, why do animals need to evolve? The ability to evolve is essential if species are to be able to adapt to changing environments. It would appear that in the evolution of higher forms of life, the death of individuals has been necessary for the survival of life itself. It is often the case that the longer the lifespan of a species, the slower is its rate of evolution. Thus, the giant redwoods, with lifespans that put even old Methuselah to shame, have changed only slightly since the time of the dinosaurs. In the same amount of time, however, our short-lived ancestors have been transformed from tiny shrew-like creatures cowering in the shadows of Mesozoic forests into Prometheans who have stolen the fire of the sun. We may be glad that our amphibian ancestors died so that their offspring could evolve into reptiles. And we may approve of the fact that our reptilian ancestors died so that some of their descendants could become mammals and ultimately human beings. But confound it, we have arrived. We are here. We are beginning to take control of our own evolution, and we don't need to continue the wasteful process of evolution by means of natural selection. Admitting the desirability of a little improvement here, a few changes there, we like ourselves, and we would like to savor the sauce of life for at least a couple millennia, even if not perhaps forever. Admitting the biological necessity for death in the past, we must ask, is death still necessary? Is death still desirable? I guess only biologists and manic depressives ask weird questions like that one. Is death still inevitable, now that we have become a form of life conscious of itself, aware of its origins, and using the insights of science instead of religion to chart its future course? I believe the answer to all these questions is an emphatic no. We no longer need to die. Mortality is not a necessity. Biological science should enable us to become essentially immortal. As we establish the foundation for this new millennium, we have already made astonishing breakthroughs in the understanding of aging. I'll be telling you all about that in these programs. In this millennium, in this century, perhaps in the next decade, aging will become first preventable and then reversible. For as long as our ancestors have been recognizable members of the species Homo sapiens, they have feared death. Only the noblest of our kind have failed to cower and quail when touched by the shadow that precedes the great dark. While yet they lived in caves, our ancestors feared to travel in the valley of the shadow. And men and women created gods and goddesses in their own images, soothing fictions to help them face the fact of their mortality. And they built temples and cathedrals as monuments to their own mortality, while hoping that their wishful thinking would bring them life eternal, life in heavenly mansions, the rental fees for which they paid out in advance to priests who claimed to hold the keys to all the front doors of all the mansions in heaven. Like their human inventors, religions have come and gone, have lived and died. But not one of them has ever taken so much as one tiny successful step toward the actual conquest of death. Indeed, almost all religions have been a major obstacle in the path of those who might have done so. Most religions have fed upon fear of death. Priests have waxed fat in direct proportion as they have developed the ability to fool people into believing that they do in fact hold magic powers over death. For millennia, our superstitions have sold us an ersatz immortality and prevented us from seeking out the real one. For more than 1,000 years, the Catholic Church impeded and even blocked the study of medicine and science. Madeleine Murray O'Hair, the founder of American Atheists, loved to proclaim, had it not been for Christianity, Columbus would have landed on the moon, not on a Caribbean island. It is only in the last century, during which the growth of science has become a force great enough to expose the fictive claims of religion, only then that our kind have been able systematically to investigate the differences between life and death. While creationists and other benighted religionists still cling to a magical, on or off, vital force misunderstanding of life and death, scientists have come to a completely materialistic understanding of the continuum of matter and energy along which we travel as we pass from life into the high entropy world of the non-living. And only in the last few decades have we found the courage to seek a cure for dying. Senectus ipse moribus est. Old age is itself a sickness. Thus said the Roman poet Terence. And this is the consensus of modern biologists, no longer believing that sickness comes either from a god or a devil. We now view aging and death as just another disease in need of cure, just like smallpox, cholera, or cancer. In my next program, the third Immortality Now program, I will begin to examine the processes of aging and their causes. I will be considering the genetic aspects of the evolution of aging and death. My next program will be titled From Mayflies to Methuselahs. Be sure to watch for its release. For now, and for American Atheists, I'm Frank Zindler.